Do you have something that you always dreamed about doing since childhood? I know I always have. I honestly think that it's never too late to achieve your dreams. I was 61 when I started writing fiction after telling myself for decades that there was no way I could ever write a novel. I decided that today I'm going to talk you through the basic process I used to make this lifelong dream of mine become a reality. By the time we get to the end, I hope you're inspired to dust off a dream of your own and take some steps to see it through. Now we're going to have a tea break. This morning I'm drinking Taylor's green tea with jasmine, which is one of my favorite teas in the whole world. I don't know what it is about jasmine. I love the way it smells and I love the way it tastes. And I'm also drinking it from another Emerson Creek pottery mug. I'll try to remember to link both down below. Okay, so what was my childhood dream? Well, you've probably figured that out by now if you didn't already know. It was to write a novel. And at the time of this recording, I had just come out with the final novel in my series, the Whippoorwill Gap Paranormal Women's Fiction Series. The novel is due to launch tomorrow. Now, from the time I first discovered that people could write, I have wanted to write. I also wanted to draw, and unfortunately that never came true. But, you know, 1 out of 2 is not bad when it comes to a lifelong dream, right? So I first gave up on that dream in college. I've mentioned this in earlier videos. Something about taking English literature classes convinced me that I didn't have what it took to write good literature. Okay, so there were a couple of problems with that line of thinking. First, whatever says that your work has to be good? I mean, why does it have to be like F. Scott Fitzgerald quality to be good? It doesn't have to be. If it makes you happy, you know, and you enjoy working on it and you're willing to try to improve, you can do a pretty good job of it. So I dusted it off occasionally before packing it away again, but it never died. So what changed? Well, here's where being an older person can be a great advantage. Now, if you're younger, I want to say this and get it out of the way. This video can also be for you. I'm focusing most of my videos on older people because I am an older person. That's where I'm at right now. But if you've got a dream, I urge you not to give up on it. If you're very young, you know, in your teens or your 20s, you've got plenty of time to polish your skills. Just try to do what you can. Even if you're not happy with it, you can always take classes, and practice makes perfect, sort of, right? So don't give up on your dream would be my urge to you. I know that most people have to put in a lot of time to earn a living, but you know, you do have free time. I might do another video one day, but they've been done to death on how I think our over-reliance on our phones and our computers for entertainment is really damaging to us, but we won't go into that today. Just know that I really think you should do it. If you're in middle age and you are overwhelmed with childcare responsibilities, maybe you're caring for an elderly parent, you're also working, I feel you. I've been there. I know how that is. And unfortunately, that caused me to just put my dream on the back burner and not even fool with it. I just felt too tired. But I would urge you also, when you have a little time, dust that dream off and see what you can do just for a little while. You don't even have to work on it every day. Just, you know, just see what you can do. Just make a little progress and see if it makes you happy. Back to the older people. If you're older, you have a huge advantage here in terms of time. I know that a lot of retired people do take over grandchildren's childcare. I know that a lot of older people work even after retirement age, and I do understand that, and I know that your energy levels do drop. I mean, believe me, I'm there. But you do tend to be less busy after retirement and after kids leave home. So I started with this dream again by reading The Artist's Way, and I realized that deep down inside, down in my soul, I had always wanted to write. And that's what that book did for me. It may not work that way for everybody, but that was the book that really turned the corner for me. And The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. Those two had a huge influence on me. So I mentioned earlier that I had already written 2 books. I was a retired librarian. I really missed doing collection development, what they call collection development, when you decide how to make your collection the best it can possibly be for the clientele that you serve, your patrons. And I enjoyed that so much. And when I left the career, I really missed it. So I wrote my first book, Library Lens, Curated Collection of Superlative Nonfiction. And then my second book, Library Lens, Biographies, Autobiographies, and Memoirs, to scratch that itch, more or less, just, to do research into what the best books were. And of course, ever since I wrote those books, I've been busy reading the books that I recommended in those books. So that's been just great, good fun. That on its own was well worth doing. But I never thought I had enough imagination to actually write a novel until the idea popped into my head for The Robin's Nest, the first in my series. I've talked about that before, so I won't. There are other videos that you can go back to where I talk about where I got my idea for that novel. It just the word cozy fantasy kind of made it pop into my head, even though the novel is not really cozy fantasy itself. But after I wrote that book, I sent it into Blue Ink Reviews, and they gave it a starred review and liked it so much they sent it to Booklist magazine, and Booklist included it in its starred reviews the month that it landed on their desk. So that was a great validation for my work. It really made me feel better about what I had done, and it gave me the confidence to continue on. Somebody's commented at the end of this novel that I don't really act like the novel is going to continue. I don't give any kind of hint that I'm going to continue with a series or anything, but that was because I really wasn't sure I would. So I came up with the idea for the second book, The Lady Slippers, because people commented that they did not like the daughter, Olivia, in this first book. So I wrote The Lady Slippers to kind of convince people that, just because people do things that aren't nice, just because people are going through a tough time and their personality may be a bit abrasive, it doesn't mean they're bad people. There were reasons that Olivia was the way she was, and she also needed to learn some lessons, so I made sure that she did that, and that was just so much fun to write. All my books these 3 books have fairies in them. There's a troupe in this North Carolina town that just happened to live in the bookstore that the mother, Harper Wood, bought. And so the fairies have a lot to do with teaching lessons and things, but they're also great, good fun. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about these books, but just suffice it to say, I had so much fun writing them. They are not huge sellers. Maybe one day that will change. There are a lot of self-published books out there these days. I'm not making excuses, but I'm not very good at marketing, and one of these days maybe they'll be discovered. There's always that hope. But my point with this video is it doesn't even matter because I had so much fun creating these books. So to get ideas for the series to start with, I purchased books for the series on fairies. I didn't really know a lot about fairy lore. I'm like most people. My idea of a fairy was Tinkerbell or what is her name? Mary Cicely Barclay's fairies. I mean, they're gorgeous. They're pretty to look at, but those are not real folklore fairies. Real folklore fairies are a little bit scary. So I purchased several books on how to learn more about those kinds of folklore. I also purchased more books on plant lore and animal lore and different things like that. The book was going to be set in a mythical town in the North Carolina mountains, so I purchased books on the history of that area. I just had a great good time, and I took notes in my lovely embroidered notebook, and I started taking classes on writing books, and that was great good fun. And then I purchased a bunch of books on how to write better, and some of these have been so helpful, and I enjoyed reading those books, and I enjoyed the process of applying the lessons I learned from those books to my ideas for my stories. I love to learn. I hope that you're with me on that, but it just to do that brought so much joy to me. It really brought a sense of purpose back to my life where I had kind of been feeling at loose ends. Of course, you know, not knowing much about genre writing, I also had to learn about genre expectations, like what main characters tended to be liked for the genre I was writing, what kind of tropes were liked. I bought the books about the emotional thesaurus, a couple of those, and those were very helpful to me. So, you know, there's reference works, there's all kinds of things out there to help you get better at anything you're wanting to do, whether it's gardening or sculpture or whatever, stamp collecting even. There are all kinds of books out there and videos to help you get better at it. So I encourage you to explore those. Now that I've finished the entire series, the third book is kind of a love triangle between characters that were already in the first book, and they're older. Well, I'm not going to give too much away, but they're older. They are just past middle age and entering the youth of old age, you know, pretty much. So, all right, I'll just put it this way. They're the female character is in her late 50s. I also wrote 4 short stories that tell the history of this town, Whippoorwill Gap, North Carolina, and it tells the history of the ferry troupe. And the stories begin in the 1600s when an English hob came over and met some of the Cherokee little people. So that's interesting. And then they move up through. The next story is about how the entire troupe gets together. The next story is about how they enter the bookshop. And then the final story is about how a woman in her mid-60s finds out that she's always been a fairy queen and has to go and take her place in the fairy realm. So they're all fun stories. They're, you know, there's nothing super serious about any of them, although I do have themes that I try to get across, mainly belonging and being authentic, being true to yourself. So those are the main themes of the books. My plan is, now that I've got the 3 books and the series is complete, my plan is to publish the 4 short stories in 1 volume. And I will give that volume away when I sell box sets of the ebook. I'll charge a little bit for it on the print books because it costs money for me to print the books. So, but I may do that. I haven't decided. I'm still kind of up in the air about that. But you can get the last short story, The Wild Rose, which is about the 65-year-old grandmother who becomes a fairy queen. I'll link that below, and you can get that if you subscribe to my newsletter. But when it comes to fulfilling something that you've always dreamed of doing, there's always advice out there. And keep in mind that some of it will work for you and some of it won't. Some of the things that I read and came across did not work for me at all. I tried most of them, but some of them just felt wrong from the start. And those I left alone. I mean, just keep that in mind. You don't have to go with the first thing you come to and follow it religiously. Go with your heart, go with your gut, go with what makes you happy. I found out in the process of writing these that they said right away, if you write fiction, you're either a plotter or a pantser. And a pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. They don't plan, they just write. I'm neither one. I think probably most authors, if they're honest, will admit that they're somewhere on a spectrum between those two things. But there's a word, I forget what they call it, but I'm a person who I do plan. I plan everything I write, but I very seldom follow the plans. Once I get into the books, the characters tell me, I don't want to do that, or no, this is what I want to do. Things change, and I let them change. Sometimes that changes the entire story, and sometimes it doesn't, but it's always interesting. I go a lot on my intuition. So now I've cut my teeth on paranormal women's fiction, and it's been fun, but I'm ready to move on to something else now. I've got all kinds of ideas, and I'm really excited. From the research I've done so far, I think I am a better fit with magical realism, so that's probably what I'm going to focus on in the future. Now, what my books will have in common, I always want older women to be either the MC or an important secondary character in my books. I think that's important. I think older people tend to be neglected. I want to have magic, just a little bit of magic, not tons of it. I don't want to create worlds anymore or anything like that, but I do want some magic in my books. I want my books to convey hope to people, that life can be joyful. I want to convey joy. And I also want to be a little bit realistic because life is messy, and I want my books to reflect that. People shouldn't feel bad when they don't do things correctly. You know, I've heard people say, well, I hated it when that character did that. Well, yeah, you do. You hate it when people do things they shouldn't do. But people do things they shouldn't do all the time. So, you know, I want my books to be realistic in that way. I plan to base most of my upcoming books on the area of Virginia, where I have grown up, lived most of my adult life, and my family came from. It's a triangular area down in the southern part of Virginia, near the Blue Ridge Mountains. Part of it is kind of in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I firmly believe that every place and every family has an incredible history, and that they can be played on and made into wonderful stories. So that's my dream come true. Now, how can you do the same? Well, if you're 60 and your dream is to run your first marathon, that may be doable for you, and it may not. So, of course, you have to be realistic. But, you know, if you had dreams of doing something athletic, and you can always choose a different athletic field that maybe if you've lost the ability to run, maybe your hips are giving you trouble or whatever, there are other things that you can do. You might want to explore that. So the first thing is evaluate how feasible reaching your goal would be. You might just have to temper your expectations about how far you can get, or scale the goal back a bit. That's okay. It's also important not to have super high expectations for recognition. You know, it's really about enjoying the process, especially at our age. And I think that's one of the advantages of being older. As long as you have a home and enough money to live on, and you don't have to worry about eating and maybe medical care, you don't need a ton of money to do most hobbies. And you probably don't need to make a lot of money on your hobby if you need to make any at all. Just do it for the dream and your love of the activity. It'll help you, and it'll help everybody around you. Your family and your friends will be happier when you're happier. That's just the way that works. Okay, so I've achieved my goal. I haven't sold millions of books. I haven't sold thousands of books. And right now, I'm not making enough money off all my books together to support myself, let alone anyone else. But I'm okay with that. I have achieved my goal, and I love the process. We've all only got so much time here on Earth. So why not, as I said before, dust off that old dream, evaluate your options, and then look into the first steps you can take to make your dream come true. Do a little research. That on its own might put a fresh bounce in your step, and who knows where it might lead. Achieving a dream is its own reward. Pursuing mine has given me loads of satisfaction. Creating a new town based on places that I would love to live. I mean, it was almost like daydreaming. This is my ideal life. And adding characters that I'd like to meet, and then putting them together in stories that had meaning. It has been a complete blast. My books are a touch on the fun side, but they also explore serious topics. So if you have a dream, whether it's mastering a craft or climbing a mountain, I encourage you to take the first steps to achieve them. Write down your dreams. Make a list of the things you need to know to get there and how to start exploring. Just doing the research on its own can be a lot of fun. I bought a book not too many years ago on walking the Wales Coastal Trail. I've never gotten there yet, and I may never get there, but I really enjoyed reading the book. So, do you have a dream you wouldn't mind sharing with the rest of us? Or is there one like me that you finally accomplished and you're very proud of yourself? If so, please share it below. Now, on to what I'm currently reading. For nonfiction, I'm reading Do Nothing, How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving, which was published in 2020 by Celeste Headley. I am so impressed with this book. I was talking about my dream and how, I have worked really hard for that dream. I didn't just do that in my spare time. I have been a bit actually obsessed with it, and a bit maybe over enthusiastic in some ways. I really have kind of worn myself out doing that dream. I don't want to give up on doing it, but I think from now on I'm going to probably take things a little bit slower. But this book is so inspirational. It gives you reasons for what, just remember that life is about more than what you accomplish. And it's about more than being busy. And she bases her ideas and her assertions on science. And I think it's a wonderful book. I've still got one section left to go, and it's probably the most important section. I can't wait to read it. It's called Leaving the Cult: How to Go from Life Hack to Life Back. So yeah, I love that book, and I highly recommend it, even though I haven't finished it. The next book I'm reading is The Book Charmer, which is one of the, if you watched my video on magical realism and how I'm doing some exploration into it to see about the tropes and that sort of thing, this is one of the books that I bought, and I am absolutely loving it. It's about a small town in North Carolina, oddly enough. I had never even heard of this book when I wrote mine, but it's about a small town in North Carolina where magic is around. It's not fairies, but there is magic there. And the characters are so wonderfully developed. It's just a really good book. The author is Karen Hawkins, and it has been a New York Times. She's a New York Times best-selling author, and I can certainly see why. I'll probably go ahead and read some more of her books at another time. So that's it for today. Like I said, if you've got anything that you'd like to add about your dreams down below, I would love to know about them. And until next time, I wish you happiness and joy.